welcome back. My name is Ruse, and where we left off in our last video was talking about functional fixedness, which is a cognitive bias that limits a person's ability to use an object in more ways than it's traditionally used and affects an individual's ability to innovate and be creative when solving challenges. And we took that idea and related it to Deadlock. The common idea behind Deadlock is that she's a sentinel, which I don't think anyone is going to argue she's not. However, there's a traditional sense of how a sentinel should be played. And that's where we run into a bit of an issue when it comes to Deadlock. Deadlock doesn't have the same kit that a traditional sentinel would have. And so I think that there's a bit of a learning curve on what exactly that means. What role does she fill if she's not the traditional sentinel? And I think in order to answer this question, you have to look at the kit itself and what's available. If we start with a grabnet, grabnet is a throwable object, but it is not a prep or a prime throwable. Like, it doesn't cook in her hand, it just instantly comes out, right? Like, if I throw it, it's instant, right? Whereas like a raised nade is you're holding on to it and then you can throw it, right? Like it's prepped and ready. So there's a slight difference there that makes you think that the grab net is actually something that should be used like on the fly. It doesn't have a prep time. It's an insta throw. Okay, so let's keep that in mind. The sonic sensor, another big controversial topic. You put it on the wall. If an enemy makes sound, it concusses the area where the sound came from, right? And so everyone looks at this and like, well, someone can just like walk by. But once again, we're using the traditional sense to measure what the sonic sensor should be. Thus trying to make it the traditional trip or the traditional alarm bot, which it's not, right? Barrier mesh. Barrier mesh is the throwable shield that she has, right? And so you got to think for a second, like, why is it throwable? It is something that like she can prep, but it's something that, in order to like kind of stop a rush or like be a defensive tool, it needs to bounce off a wall or be thrown over the top of something. Because like if it's not, she's exposed and it's see-through. So it's not one of those things where you want to be on the other end kind of with your abilities prepping and getting them ready to go. So her entire kit, even her ultimate, which does not have a prep time, which is an instacast, right? And then it has the timer that goes down and then you lose it. Well, why would I have an ultimate? Like, there are other ultimates in the games that don't share those characteristics. Raze has this ability to sort of like prep her abilities. Or if we do ISO, brand new character, his ultimate is something that's preppable, right? And so why isn't this preppable? So what that tells me when I look at kind of all the cards on the table is that this is a kit that's made for a character that's on the fly, that's on the move. And so in a way you want to set up your setups so they're reactionary, right? Like, it's not something that you're trying to block off certain parts of the map. It's almost as if you want to welcome certain parts of the map. And I think ultimately what this comes down to is the fact that just like ISO, I think Deadlock might be in a new category of a support sentinel. A character that's made to be played off of, right? Her sound sensor, if like, let's say we put it at like max range here, right? So like to see how far that goes, look how far that goes, right? I could have a person set up on an off angle, like right here. And so like now they're using that trip as like, since it's max range and they're going to walk into it or run into it, because this is like an execute, right? So no one's walking here usually. They're going to run into that trip, stun them, and that will give your support character that you're playing the spike site with, a little extra chance to have a chance at a trade or a kill or a multi-kill. Anyways, the moral of the story, the point of the story is that when it comes down to it, you can't think of Deadlock in a traditional sense. We have to move on from the fact that traditional roles may exist, but think of like a dev trying to express different ways of making this game and to have fun. And if they could only work within that traditional sense of what a character was, how limiting that would be. And I think with like Deadlock, with the fact that like ISO came out and we got the Gulag, these sorts of things are like ideas that are not usually expressed in these video games. Those are ideas that are out there. And so I think that these new characters that we're getting are like an expression of something trying to be different. Like maybe putting them into these roles, such as like Sentinel Duelist, but then reinventing what the expression of that role means. Harbor is another example of a non-traditional character who came out and everyone thought he was bad, but then when you mix him with another character like Viper, all of a sudden that's a new meta, right? These characters are not going to be the same, and we have to start measuring them differently.